Something feels off across the PGA Tour, and you sense it long before anyone dares name the problem. Scottie Scheffler keeps grinning. Brian Rolapp sells a golden future to whoever will listen. The cameras adore it. Beneath that polished handshake, though, sits the real bombshell no broadcast will touch. The world number one is quietly wrecking his new commissioner's master plan and doing it behind a smile that never slips. Here is what actually changed. Back in June, Rolapp unveiled a two-tier revolution for 2028 promotion and relegation lifted straight from European football. Scheffler applauded on cue, calling it a move in the right direction. Then came the beat no highlight reel replayed that same month. He warned the crowded schedule carries real danger. The very engine this whole plan runs on rewind to spring, and he ghosted a $20 million event to spare his own legs. His words bless the blueprint. Finally, the calendar exposes a colder truth because a superstar who endorses the system yet turns against it with his feet is the one crack Rolapp cannot afford. Subscribe now, since no other channel dares connect these dots. Let me walk you through the timeline those highlight reels buried. Rewind to a Tuesday in June 2026. Brian Rolapp gathered the membership and laid out the boldest redesign the PGA Tour has attempted in a generation. Two separate leagues would launch in 2028. The upper tier, christened the Championship Series, would concentrate the game's elite across roughly 24 dates, majors and playoffs included, with something close to 18 premium tournaments engineered to carry the weight of a player's championship. Below it would sit the Challenger Series, a proving ground the commissioner insists is no glorified feeder tour. Movement between the two rests on promotion and relegation, the same unforgiving logic that governs English football. Strong play earns a seat among the elite. A prolonged slump drops a man straight out of the richest rooms in the sport. Understand who is delivering this pitch because the messenger matters. Rolapp is not a lifelong golf man. He spent 2 decades climbing the National Football League, where he became the architect behind Thursday Night Football and turned a quiet midweek slot into a commercial juggernaut. When the tour hired him in 2025 as the successor to Jay Monahan, the mandate was obvious. Modernize a sport that had been bruised by its war with LIV Golf, and do it with the ruthlessness of a television executive who knows how attention actually works. He arrived promising bold moves while respecting tradition. The 2028 blueprint is that promise made concrete. To sweeten the deal, Rolapp restored 2 things purists had been begging for. Fields would swell back toward 120 players. The 36-hole cut, hollowed out during the no-cut experiments of the LIV era, would come back to punish a bad Friday again. He even floated a match play format to crown the postseason champion from 2028 onward. On paper, it reads like a masterstroke, a leaner and crueler product built for broadcast and for fans who had grown weary of sleepy small field exhibitions where nobody ever missed a weekend. Those restorations were not cosmetic. During the LIV war, the tour leaned on limited fields and cut-free signature events to guarantee sponsors a weekend stacked with famous faces. Fans and commentators pushed back hard, complaining that a tournament nobody could lose by Friday drained the drama out of the product. Rolapp's answer was to hand the jeopardy back. A bigger field with a real cut restores the possibility of collapse, and the risk of losing is what makes a Sunday matter. The irony almost writes itself. He rebuilt the danger inside each individual event, yet the threat to his whole project now flows from the very stars these reforms were designed to showcase. Standing in the middle of it all was the one person whose opinion moves the needle further than anyone else's. Scottie Scheffler did not flinch. He called the direction correct. Excitement crept into his voice as he described what was coming. Pressed a little harder, he conceded the tour could hardly do more for its players, and he singled out the bigger fields and the returning cut as long overdue fixes. Consider the source. This came from the world number one, a man then riding a made-cut streak that had stretched past 77 consecutive events. a level of consistency the sport had rarely witnessed. Rolapp could not have written a better spokesman into the script. The face of golf had just handed his revolution a public stamp of approval on live television. Here, though, sits the detail that turns a feel-good story into something far more precarious. The entire architecture leans on a single, fragile assumption. A marquee event in that top tier only feels like a major when the biggest names actually appear week after week, without exception. Relegation carries menace solely when the stars treat every date as unmissable. Strip away the guarantee that Scheffler and his rivals will show, and the whole cathedral begins to sway. The commissioner is not really selling more golf. He is selling concentration, the promise that the finest players in the world will collide constantly rather than scatter thinly across a bloated calendar. That single promise is the load-bearing beam holding up his entire roof. Now watch what unfolded in the very same week Scheffler blessed the plan. Fresh off a tie for fourth at the U.S. Open, he settled into his press conference at the Travelers Championship and reflected openly on the dangers of a crowded schedule. Read that back slowly. The plan Rolapp had just unveiled deliberately packs more heavyweight events into a tighter window. That same star was, in that exact moment, sounding an alarm about the physical toll of precisely that kind of density. He did not frame it as an attack. Confrontation has never been his style. Even so, the subtext hummed beneath every measured sentence. A human body can absorb only so many high-stakes weeks before something quietly gives way. That week closed on a small but telling footnote. Scheffler dragged the tournament into a Monday playoff and then lost it to Victor Hovland, a rare stumble in a campaign that had already produced 8 top 5 finishes, yet only a single victory. Nobody claimed fatigue decided the result. Still, the picture lingered uncomfortably. The most dominant golfer alive had been forced into an extra day only to surrender a signature title, mere hours after warning that the grind itself is the real enemy. If that felt circumstantial, the spring had already handed us something much harder to wave away. Weeks before the Travelers, the Truist Championship arrived carrying a $20 million purse and a field built around the world's best. Scheffler skipped it. He chose recovery, shielding his body from the exact signature event treadmill he would soon celebrate as the future of the tour. Then he slipped back onto the schedule at the CJ Cup Byron Nelson, a smaller and less demanding stop, and teed it up there instead. Sit with that contradiction for a second. The man publicly championing a model built on flooding the calendar with elevated events had, weeks earlier, walked away from one of the biggest when his own recovery called for it. This is where a hairline crack widens into a genuine fault line. Scheffler is not the only superstar treating the schedule like a buffet. Rory McIlroy, the other true box office draw, sat out the Cadillac Championship this year and keeps splitting his season with the DP World Tour across the Atlantic. Two men shoulder the commercial weight of the entire circuit, and both guard their independence ferociously. When the two largest gravitational forces in the sport each pick and choose, the dream of a top tier, where everyone always turns up, starts to look like exactly what it is: a fantasy. People inside the game already sense the danger. Stephen Gallacher, a former Ryder Cup competitor, stated plainly on the Sky Sports Golf podcast that he doubts Rolapp can force every elite player onto one identical schedule. Each of them, Gallacher pointed out, arranges the year around private priorities that no boardroom can override. McIlroy structures his season around the majors and his European commitments. Scheffler tends to vanish from the spotlight through the long stretch between the President's Cup and the Hero World Challenge, quietly choosing family and rest over another appearance fee. No commissioner, however glittering his resume, can simply order men of that magnitude to fall obediently into line. Give Rolapp credit because he reads the terrain better than his critics assume. He has openly said the tour is at its strongest when players enjoy the widest range of opportunities. The trouble is that opportunity and obligation pull hard in opposite directions. A calendar generous enough to hand everyone a chance quickly becomes too heavy for anyone to play in full. Load management, the phrase that has haunted modern basketball for years, has already crept into golf's vocabulary. Scheffler happens to be its most valuable and most persuasive practitioner. A further complication is lurking that Rolapp cannot simply ignore. He is working at the very same time to lure talent back from LIV Golf. Brooks Koepka already returned under his watch, and Scheffler himself praised that reintegration for its speed and its smoothness. The commissioner is now cracking open more pathways, fielding pointed questions about whether Jon Rahm and Bryson DeChambeau might eventually walk back through the door. Every returning superstar injects fresh star power, which sounds glorious until the arithmetic sinks in. That means more elite bodies needing protection and a fiercer scramble for a finite number of premium slots. Each new arrival simply hands the stars one more reason to ration their own energy. The reintegration Rolapp so badly wants could quietly deepen the exact problem Scheffler already embodies. What makes his stance sting a little more is the crowd around him. Most of the membership has embraced the changes, with player after player lining up behind the new direction in public. That broad support throws Scheffler's schedule behavior into sharper relief. The rank-and-file talk up the plan and mean it. The superstar talks it up too, then acts on a different set of priorities entirely. So circle back to the charge in the title and weigh it with clear eyes. Scheffler is not scheming against Brian Rolapp. He has never spoken a hostile word about the man. There is no feud. Nobody leaked a damning email. A dramatic confrontation is not sitting in a vault somewhere waiting for a reporter to pry it loose. What exists instead is something subtler and, in its own strange way, more dangerous to the master plan. The single most important player on Earth publicly endorses the blueprint, while his personal choices steadily chip away at the foundation beneath it. His voice props Rolapp up, even as his tee sheet quietly undercuts the very same man. Both truths coexist, and the second one almost never survives the edit into a highlight reel. This is the paradox that may come to define the entire Rolapp era. His grand design demands total unity of participation, a locked-in commitment from the precise group of players least inclined to surrender it. He engineered a system that punishes absence through relegation, yet the men perched at the summit are wealthy enough and secure enough that relegation will never realistically brush them. Scheffler could skip a fistful of championship series events and still glide into every major on reputation and world ranking alone. The threat designed to discipline everyone beneath him barely registers for the man standing at the very top. And if the king feels perfectly free to rest, why on earth would the dukes below him accept anything less than the same freedom? None of this guarantees the plan crumbles. Rolapp is shrewd, deeply funded, and clearly unafraid to bend a century of tradition to his will. He may yet design incentives lucrative enough to keep even Scheffler chained to every date that truly matters. Make no mistake, though, about the sheer scale of the obstacle standing in his path. The hardest problem in professional golf has nothing to do with LIV, television ratings, or the majors. It is convincing the sport's single greatest asset to show up when his body would rather stay home. Until Rolapp cracks that riddle, the quiet wrecking will grind on, one skipped signature event at a time. If breakdowns like this are why you follow the game far beyond the leaderboard, do something small for the channel right now. Hit subscribe before you click away. The bell keeps the next investigation landing straight in your feed. Then settle the debate for us in the comments. Is Scheffler quietly dismantling Rolapp's master plan, or is he merely the smartest operator in the sport, guarding his own future while everyone else salutes? Tell us where you stand. The next chapter of this saga is already being written, and you are going to want a front row seat when the truth finally breaks wide open.